Alright, this is John Cole with OKRaw.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you. In this episode, I got the whiteboard out. So I'm going to give you guys one of my downloads on my beliefs and the raw vegan diet lifestyle, whatever you guys want to call it. Now, here's the thing, guys. I started out eating a raw living foods diet back in 1995. So this is not something I just got into or something that I believe all the dogma that I've read, because I've been very impressionable, especially in my early years. Now that I've been doing and living a raw foods diet for, the majority of my adult life at this point, right? I have some new thoughts about the raw foods diet, right? As you guys can see from the title of this video, I'm gonna say it straight up, the raw foods diet is restrictive. Yes, I know some of you guys are pulling out your hair if you guys have any hair left right now, because there's plenty of videos online on how the raw foods diet is not restrictive. But let's face it, guys, unless you're living on planet, Mars or planet 13 or in some outer space planet that doesn't exist, right? The raw foods diet is restrictive. I'm going to share with you guys my opinions on this topic, as well as I'm going to share with you guys on some techniques and tips so you guys could unrestrict your raw foods diet. It's my personal opinion that the less restrictive you are in your eating, right, the more successful you will be if you are going for a true health outcome, right? Whether you're trying to reverse a disease like I got thrown into when I got into raw foods, whether you're trying to lose some weight or get healthier, right? My personal belief, and based on some of the science out there, is that the more different kinds of foods, plant foods specifically, you guys can eat, the healthier you guys will be. And to restrict to only eating bananas for the rest of your life, while you could do that if you wanted and you'd probably live, fairly well, right? I don't believe that's, the most beneficial thing to do in the long term. I know you guys are thinking, John, there was that guy that lived on potatoes for years. Well, you could live on potatoes for years. You could be pretty healthy. But, at some point, you're not going to be healthy because your body is going to be starving of certain nutrients that you're not going to get from eating a diet of only potatoes. This happens to a much lesser degree when you're eating a variety of raw foods, but if you're eating a very refined raw food diet, 30 bananas a day, a head of romaine lettuce, and some dates, and blend that up, and you eat bananas, dates, and lettuce every day, right? You're getting a small subset of all the different phytochemicals on the entire planet. What are phytochemicals? Phytochemicals are basically the compounds, the secondary metabolites that plants make that they put into their tissues to protect themselves from the weather and to grow. And when we eat these plant phytochemicals, I like to call them phytonutrients, the plant confers some of those protections and nutrition and nutrients on us. Right? I know a big thing is, John, we just need to get calories, fat, and protein. These are the macronutrients. These are the most important things. Well, yep, it's important to get our macros, and a lot of raw food diets may focus on macronutrients only. 80-10-10, for example, is a macronutrient eating profile of carbohydrates to proteins of fats. For me, on the other hand, yes, macros are important, but I'm more concerned about the micronutrients. And, by eating a very limited diet, you could easily meet your macronutrient profile, but in my opinion, you're not going to meet your micronutrient profile, which includes all the other things, including things like the vitamins and the minerals, the structured water, different kind of plant compounds, including fiber and enzymes. There's so many different nutrients in plants that have been discovered, and even some that have not yet been discovered. So I want you guys to expand, not restrict the kinds of foods you guys can eat. So let me go ahead and give a quick diagram here. I'm going to use what's called a Venn diagram, if you remember back to math. I know for some of you guys, Venn diagrams are a big turnoff, and you may not like them, but this is how I'm going to explain it, all right? So here's the thing. We have a standard American diet. That's this big circle. Standard American diet, the SAD diet. If you eat an SAD diet, you can eat anything inside the grocery store. This is like the whole grocery store, right? And I don't have the best writing. But anyways, this is the whole grocery store, right? If you were to stand American diet, you could go into the whole grocery store and eat anything in there because you're not restricting anything. Now, that could be good or bad. A lot of things in the grocery store I wouldn't want to eat, nor would I recommend to eat because it's highly processed foods and not too good. Say you're vegan, so we're going to put vegan in the blue, right? In the grocery store, if you eat a standard, you can eat everything. But if you're vegan, then now you can only eat a smaller subset of the foods in the grocery store because now you can only eat the plant foods, right? These are all plant foods, even if they're highly processed foods, right? They could be fried, they could be baked, they could have oil in them, as long as they're not from an animal, right? So out here would be like things like dairy and meat, right? Eggs, also out here, right? And in the plant foods, now you are restricting if you're vegan because you can't eat everything anymore. You're now going to not eat eggs, meat, and dairy and other foods, maybe including honey, that come from animals due to your beliefs. The beliefs that you want to live by. And I appreciate you guys if you guys want to live by your vegan hardcore beliefs and restrict your eating to just the plant foods because you know what? Too many animals die needlessly. Too many animals are abused needlessly just so that people can eat their body parts and their excrements for profit, which I think is sad. If you guys want to eat your own animal products, right, don't buy them at the store. Make them yourself. Grow your own animals, kill them and slaughter them, harvest your own eggs, milk your own cows or suck on their teats directly, right? Some vegans may get mad at me for saying that, but I'm a realist, right? I think that if people had to kill their own meat to eat it, I think there'd be a lot more vegans or people that didn't eat meat. Anyways, let's move on because I'm getting sidetracked. Right, now we got a green pen. Say you're going to be a raw vegan, right? Now you can eat all the plant foods, but you can't eat all the plant foods. Now you're eating a smaller subset of the plant foods because now you're not going to eat breads. Breads are in this outer ring. Bread could be totally vegan, right? Breads that are cooked, baked from flour that's been ground down. They add sugar in there. You're not going to do that because now you are raw. And inside this raw food box, right, it's even more restrictive. So now you're eating even less things. Of course, inside that box could be fruits and vegetables, grains, nuts and seeds, things that are not heat processed, if that's the most important criteria to you. I'll give you guys another link down below. When I use the whiteboard again, another one of my very important videos I want you guys to watch. Just because it's raw doesn't mean it's healthy. A video I made that I really want to encourage you guys to think. I'm not going to have the same content that most raw vegans have. I'm going to have my own content because I think a little bit different, for the better or for the worse, right? So yeah, when you're raw, you even eat a smaller subset of the vegan plant foods, right? Now here's the worst thing. If you're a fruitarian and you only eat fruit, right? This is raw foods. On raw foods you can eat, grains and nuts and seeds that haven't been heated, maybe even better sprouted. But if you're a fruitarian, we're going to put that in red. Now you're eating a small subset of raw food as you can eat because you only eat fruit. Now, going from this jump to this jump, I think is a good jump, although there's still lots of processed foods in a vegan diet. And then going to raw, you could still quite be healthy on raw. And I know some people would argue with me that some people say you could be quite healthy on a fruitarian or strictly fruit diet. I'm not saying in my definition of a fruitarian diet, there's no vegetables, no nuts, no seeds, because you're only eating the fruit, right? On a fruitarian diet, I've seen very few people succeed long-term on a fruit-based diet, and then they may not be having the health outcome of life that I want. But if it floats your boat and you love being fruitarian and only eating fruit and not eating vegetables, more power to you. Keep doing what you guys believe. That being said, what I'm going to show you guys in this video is how to expand your raw vegan, literally circle, I'm not going to say box, circle that you put yourself in because you're eating raw, small subset of the plant-based vegan foods in the grocery store, right? As a long-term raw vegan, I completely understand there are lots of benefits to eating more fresh fruits and vegetables, which should be the basis of your raw vegan diet. That being said, I see so many raw vegans online making YouTube videos. What I eat a day? Those videos do great, right? They get a lot of views. This video will probably get, hardly any views. But those of you guys that are watching it are going to get some information that I think is critical for your long-term health success that literally you guys aren't going to hear anywhere else. Because I've melded the best of the raw foods and, minimally processing my foods to integrate and expand the varieties of foods that I'm eating, because recent studies are showing that the greater variety and diversity of food, the greater your microbiome. The better your microbiome is, the better your health outcome is, maybe your longevity is going to be, and healing from different diseases in the body. That's my personal belief. Of course, if you guys have your own beliefs, like, I don't want to expand the items I eat, John, I'm happy eating fruits and vegetables. Dude, do that then. I'm just telling you guys what I do as somebody who's been doing this for 27 years, trying to, eke out, and make the best diet for me, because I've learned that, hey, as much as raw foods is one of the best diets out there, you could tweak it to make it even better. In my personal opinion, of course, a lot of you guys may think, John, you're full of BS, man. When you cook food, you degrade it, and now it's no longer good for you. You've messed up the proteins, you're creating carcinogens and all these crazy things. Now, you guys may believe that. I believe there's some raw food dogma in there, and we could cover each point by point. That's not the topic of this video. There are definitely some benefits to certain kinds of heat processed foods. Not going to get into heat processed foods in a major way in this episode, but I will link you down below. Watch my video why a, 26 or 27 year raw vegan started eating heat processed foods or cooked foods for better health. I explain it all in that video. Anyways, let's go on. So now, as you guys can see on the board here, I got some of the foods that are commonly included in a raw foods diet. I mean, everybody's going to agree that a raw foods diet should be consisting of primarily fruits and vegetables. Some people may do sprouts, some more than others. Maybe you're also doing leafy greens. I kind of put that in its own category because it is so important. Leafy greens, in my personal opinion, are not just the same as vegetables. Leafy greens are packed with nutrition. Leafy greens and sprouts, in my opinion, are some of the most important plant foods to include on a raw foods diet. Yet many people don't eat leafy greens or sprouts in any sufficient quantity to make a super huge difference in their health. They are packed full of phytonutrients. In addition, on a raw foods diet, you may include or not include some of these things, including nuts. A pure fruit diet may not include nuts. An 80-10-10 diet, you may not eat any overt fats, right? Seeds, grains. Some people, grains cause damage, John. I'm not eating grains. Legumes, oils. Yes, oils can be raw. Some oils may have a health benefit, especially like high polyphenol olive oil, which is labeled in the EU, but not in the US. I'm not saying any olive oil is healthy, but certain olive oils can be healthy, but it depends on what it's replacing. Fermented foods can be raw and quite beneficial, especially to your microbiome, but some raw food camps will believe they're, rotten food. Seaweed and algae, also considered filter feeders by some camps in raw foods. And algae, these make up the base of the food pyramid for the oceans and where fish get their proteins. So instead of eating fish, actually today I took a DHA algae supplement to get DHA preformed, aside from some of my flax seeds. Also herbs. This time of year I'm growing lots of basil, and it's the primary herb that I'm eating. I think of basil as a leafy green, not necessarily an herb. It is a bit stronger flavored, but I love the flavor straight, and it grows so easy in my garden when the weather's 100 degrees out. Spices, a nutritional powerhouse of phytonutrients and polyphenols and plant compounds that can better your health, but in some raw food camps, they're toxic and should be avoided, right? And condiments, there's lots of condiments that you can add that you could source raw if you looked really hard, Some of them I like to use are olives. You could buy raw olives. I covered it in a recent video. Big Picture Foods has fermented olives. Actually, I tip for you guys that have a grocery outlet near you. I just saw the Big Picture Foods raw fermented olives at grocery outlet a couple weeks ago for $2.99. That's about like a half or maybe 1/3 of the price that you may find them at like your better health food stores. So go check. But yeah, those are raw. Capers, they can be raw too. Big Picture Foods also had unpasteurized fermented capers. They can be hard to find. Otherwise, you could get like salt-dried capers that haven't been heated, but they're packed in salt. So you want to rinse out the salt, because salt, in my opinion, is not a health food. And then things like vinegar, you get like raw apple cider vinegar. And to up your game, check my other videos. You know, I have videos on like a balsamic vinegar, and also vinegar such as raw pomegranate and raspberry vinegar that could be raw. If you're super want to stay, make sure you're still raw. And even things like coconut aminos that may be considered raw by some people. I'm not a big fan of Bragg's liquid aminos based around soy, but I do use coconut aminos on some limited basis. So depending on your raw foods diet, you may just eat fruits and vegetables, right? And then you might limit that even more and only eat fresh fruits and vegetables, right? Because you think juiced fruits or vegetables is bad because you're removing some of the fiber. But yet you will blend up in your Vitamix 30 bananas with a handful of greens and drink that because you're getting all your fiber. But what you guys don't understand is every time you process your food, whether it is by dehydration, whether it's from blending up, whether it's from juicing, whether it's from just eating it whole, right? You are selecting for certain nutrients in the food that you will absorb more or less. When I heat process my food, I'm definitely not selecting for enzymes because I'm losing all the enzyme activity in my heat processed food, but I may be eating for other reasons, including different kinds of fibers that are transformed during the cooking and then cooling process. So that's what I want you guys to realize, right? And if you guys have like such like blinders on that, like I only eat fresh, juice is bad because the main guy that I learned from said juice is bad, that's a kind of restriction in my personal opinion, guys. I mean, I may drink a little bit more juice than I need to, but also I live in the desert where it's an arid climate and my humidifier thing says it's like 20, it's usually around 20% humidity. So like as I'm sitting here talking, like liquid is being dehydrated and coming out of me, so I need to replenish with hydration. And you know, instead of drinking water, I like to drink fresh juices for my hydration. In addition, you know, some raw food camps think dried foods are bad because they dehydrate you. That's absolutely true. Dehydrated foods can dehydrate you because they have a lower water content than you have. But I believe they play a role in our overall health if used and consumed properly, right? Hey, if you're on a camping trip and you need your calories, right? Hey, freeze-dried fruit is an excellent way to do that because they are very light to pack, and you could find hopefully water on your camping trip. You could rehydrate them and basically almost have the same thing as fresh fruit when you use freeze-dried fruit because you're losing very little nutrition under the freeze-drying process, you know, and you're keeping actually the enzymes depending on the freeze-drying process. But in general, the freeze-drying process is much better than standard air drying, that you could lose a lot of antioxidant compounds and nutrients. I mean, things turn black when dehydrated. You know, same thing with veggies. You know, people make comments, John, you eat too many kale chips. I love my kale chips, especially when kale's in my garden. I have such an abundance of greens. I gotta process it so I can eat it later in the season when I don't have all the greens. I'll dehydrate my kale and I will eat kale chips. They don't have too much salt on there because salt is not a good thing to eat. But I could add cayenne pepper and some nuts and some seeds and some different condiments and herbs and spices and flavoring. And now I'm eating more greens. You know, to me, greens and sprouts are some of the paramount and most important things that people should be including on a raw foods diet. And most people simply just eat a lot of fruit and they forget and neglect the leafy greens and sprouts. I personally believe that this will bite people in the ass in the future, and then that in the long run, they will not be successful on a raw foods diet if you're not eating enough vegetables and fruits. I personally think that by not eating enough leafy greens and sprouts and even veggies in the long term on a raw foods diet will bite you in the ass, and you will not get the health benefits you need because you're not going to be meeting all your nutritional requirements, right? And this is not something that I just teach. Look at like Doctors Rick and Karen Dina. You could look up their website, Raw Food Education. You could look under their, you know, past, whatever blog things they do, and they have video blogs where they go over every year this, and you know, they show that in the data. I don't show that in the data, but they show that in the data how much more you could ramp up some of your rudimentary vitamins and minerals by including greater amounts of vegetables in your diet to be successful. Yet, most of the diets and raw foodies on YouTube are promoting a very high fruit diet, in my personal opinion. And once again, I haven't been doing this for 5 years, 6 years, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15 years. I've been doing this 27 years. I've seen people that have gone all fruit, and I've seen a lot of those people do a lot of fruit or high fruit diets completely crash and fail, and now they are ex-vegans talking shit about raw foods because it didn't work for them because they didn't eat enough vegetables, right? So once again, it's very important to diversify your diet. If you're eating a lot of fruit now, hey, fresh fruit is great, right? Eat more veggies, whether you gotta eat them fresh. I like to personally juice my veggies. I had a 32-ounce green juice this morning, so before I even ate any food, I got 4 pounds of veggies in me. And I don't know how many of you guys could say you got 4 pounds of veggies in you already today. Not many of you, and a lot of those veggies, including the ashitaba and the kale, was from my garden that I grew. I mean, that's even extra credit. Grow your own fruits and vegetables and other foods for extra credit, because I believe those are even healthier than things you can buy from the store. Likewise, I want to cover sprouts and leafy greens. I mean, eating them fresh is great. Add them to salads, add them to soups, add them to your different raw food creations. But also juice them. They juice wheatgrass at the Ann Wigmore Institute. I would consider wheatgrass juice like a sprout juice. You could juice your sprouts also. I don't necessarily recommend juicing sprouts. I would rather eat them or vacuum blend them myself. But also, know this, you guys could get dried sprouts. So what's dried sprouts? You could have like barley grass juice powder. Barley grass juice powder is recommended in some camps not recommended. It's all by far it's best to like grow your own barley grass or wheatgrass or kamut grass and juice it yourself. But if you're not going to do that, minimally get the juice, or whether you get some wheatgrass juice powders, right? They could play a role because now you're expanding your diet on something that you wouldn't grow. Like, I'm not going to sit here and grow barley grass and try to juice it, but I do buy barley grass juice powder and include it in my diet sometimes. So once again, I could have a broader range of different nutrients, even if they are dried, and even if the drying process happened above 118 degrees. I'm not super concerned about that anymore, because the overwhelming majority of things I eat are minimally processed and raw, not processed above 118 degrees. Likewise, leafy greens, one of the most important foods you guys could eat on a raw vegan diet, even if you're vegan, or even if on your standard American diet, right? I want you guys to eat your leafy greens. Leafy greens are the most under-eaten food on the entire planet. Most people find it hard and difficult to eat leafy greens. Yeah, you can maybe eat a pound of leafy greens in a salad if you really like chewing. You could put a pound of leafy greens in your blender and maybe blend it into a green smoothie with some fruits. Get it in you. Hopefully you're using a vacuum blender so you don't oxidize the heck out of the greens and lose percentage of the nutrition out of them. Links down below to my video on a $40 vacuum blender that's probably now out of stock. But I want you guys vacuum blending, and look it up if you guys haven't heard about it before. Could take your diet to the next level just by changing out your appliance. Me personally, I like to juice my greens because that compresses down the quantity that I could get, so now I could get more leafy greens in me. The science is clear. The more leafy greens you could eat in your diet, the healthier you will be. That being said, it's also very important to rotate the food you're eating. I mean, all year long, depending on where you live in the world, you could eat bananas and lettuce all year long because it's always in the grocery store. That being said, it doesn't always, it's in season somewhere in the world, but may not be available, but may not grow locally in your specific region. So for that reason, I encourage you guys to eat as locally as possible this time of year. I just had locally grown peaches. I had my own backyard grown eggplant. Link down below for how I heat process that up in the Instant Pot if you're interested on my gardening channel. I encourage you guys to eat locally and seasonally and adjust and change what you're eating throughout the year. This will ensure that you're not overeating certain plant foods and not eating others. When I go to farmers markets, I always look for the new and different and unique plant foods, fruits and vegetables that I haven't seen before, and those are the ones that I'm going to buy. I don't go to the farmer's market every week and always get kale, lettuce, and apples, right? I'm like looking for that in-season fruit that they barely ever have. Like if I see pawpaws, I'm buying them. You know, when they got organic cherries, I'm going to buy them because those things are going to disappear, right? This also encourages you guys to not eat spinach every day. I know some of you guys love your tubs of spinach organic at Costco for $3.50 or more depending on where you live. But eating spinach every day, you know, I don't believe that's a good strategy because now you're going to be eating too many oxalates, right? Hey, your body can handle oxalates. We have oxalate digesting bacteria in our guts if you have a healthy gut microbiome. But I don't believe in, you know, eating spinach every day. You know, actually spinach and other oxalate, high oxalate foods, I'm not a super huge fan of. I eat them very irregularly, right? But yet I do eat them. So very important. It's like these small concepts that nobody ever told you about, that I should really rotate my greens. Maybe this week or today I'm going to eat dandelions, tomorrow I'm going to eat escarole, the next day I'm going to have lettuce, the next day I'm going to have kale, the next day I'm going to have bok choy, the next day I'm going to have arugula, the next day I'll have some spinach, then I'll have some Swiss chard or some beet greens, then I'll have some carrot greens, right? Always rotate the different kinds of greens. Then I'm going to go wild harvest some greens near me, you know, some lamb's quarters. I ate lamb's quarters on my garden actually yesterday in the salad I made because I'm growing in my garden. I picked some purslane out of my garden, and purslane is going to be out of season here within a month because it's going to get too hot. It's not going to grow, so I'm not going to be eating that in a month from now, right? And it always changes. And if, you know, once again, grow a garden, guys. That's one of the most important things you guys can do as a raw vegan, or even a vegan, or even just a person living on the planet, because it'll force you to eat more out of your garden, and you'll learn what's in season when. And then you'll really kind of consider, should I really be eating lettuce in the middle of the summer when it's not going to grow for me outside? Or maybe I should eat a little bit more fruits, or maybe I should eat some of the greens like the longevity spinach that does grow in my garden in the summertime. So once again, if you guys neglect eating leafy greens because you don't like to eat them fresh, you don't like to drink them juice like I do, you eat some dried leafy greens. What's that? Like kale chips. You could also just get kale powder, spinach powder, lettuce. I have lettuce powder that's actually high mineral lettuce powder. But these can be found. You can get them plain if you want. And the main thing about the dried foods is that they allow you to eat more of the food than you otherwise would fresh, because when you dry something, it removes the water content, it concentrates it down. That's another reason why I like juicing greens, because it concentrates down the greens that you're going to eat, right? It removes some of the fiber, not all the fiber, and now you can get it in a more absorbable form that science have shown can, you know, the beta carotene will get absorbed much more quickly and easily in higher amounts than eating the vegetables alone. Now, once again, everything I'm sharing in this episode is my beliefs based on the science, based on what I've learned. You know, do your own research to confirm this if you don't believe me. But this is what the path that I'm on, and I think it's quite prudent and makes sense, right? All right, so let's move on. Nuts and seeds. How can you diversify your nut and seed consumption? I know a lot of you guys may go to the store and you always buy the almonds because you love the almonds so much and you eat almonds as your primary nut. I'm going to tell you guys right now that my primary dominant nut is macadamia nuts from Hawaii. I love them, but I also get Brazil nuts from Costco. Actually, they have some good Brazil nuts. I get my raw cashews that have been steam sterilized from Costco. You know, I get some pine nuts, some Mediterranean pine nuts, not the ones from China. I get those locally, or you should just buy those online. I get walnuts and red walnuts from the farmer's market. I get black walnuts. I get pistachios from a local farm that I crack. Some of my mac nuts come, you know, I just go to Hawaii and just bring the mac nuts back in the full shell. A lot of my nuts I buy in the winter time during Christmas when they come in bags. Link down below to that video. I buy in-shell nuts, and I'll have a few nuts a day. My personal belief is that eating some additional nuts in your diet, also this is based on science, will increase and better your health outcome and longevity in the long run instead of avoiding them. I mean, this has been proven in science. So don't be scared of the nuts and seeds, especially the seeds, guys. Don't be scared of your seeds. Seeds are very high in some of those trace minerals that may be deficient in a raw vegan diet, including things like zinc, right? I eat pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, and walnut seeds, all sprouted and then dehydrated from Go Raw. I love Go Raw as a company. Your sprouts near you, they may have some of the Go Raw nuts and seeds on clearance right now, depending. They are in my local store here. In addition, Grocery Outlet is a good source for some of those sprouted nuts and seeds. And in the past, Costco has sold Go Raw sprouted nuts, sprouted seeds actually, so I stocked up when they put them on clearance because I guess they weren't selling good enough, right? So that makes it really easy to include more seeds. Now, by all means, if you guys want to soak and sprout and then dehydrate your nuts and seeds, go for it. I don't have the time in my busy lifestyle. That being said, I'm not going overboard with nuts and seeds. I'm not opening a bag of cashews and just shovel them in. When I eat nuts and seeds, I may do a handful of seeds a day, and then I'll do like 2 of each nut that I have, 2 Brazil nuts, 2 almonds, 2 pistachios, 2 macadamia nuts, 2 pecans, and 2 hazelnuts, right? And just crack those with my nut cracker and eat them. So I'm eating a regular source of nuts in my diet, because once again, a lot of raw foodists may not eat any nuts and seeds, or maybe only eat almonds only, right? Once again, also in the seeds, I want to mention, it's very important to eat your flax seeds. They have lignans in there. They're high in omega-3 fatty acids, super important and critical for our health. If you just start eating any nuts, I encourage you guys to minimally always eat a tablespoon of flax seeds a day to kind of offset the higher omega-6 that are in most nuts with the flax seeds. Of course, chia and hemp are also some great seeds you guys should be eating. Another thing I do to expand the nuts and seeds I eat is I learned about these nuts called baru nuts that actually are a wild nut grown in Brazil on the Cerrado, which is like the desert area. And they're called baru nuts, and I had those at a trade show, and I think they're like toasted. I think also the Sacha inchi seeds, which are actually high in omega-3, they're seeds. Those are also heat processed, but I will include those because I believe the health benefits of those seeds and nuts, are more beneficial even if I am eating small amounts of heat processed nuts and seeds. That being said, if I can get the seed raw or nut raw, I will get it raw. So for example, the nuts, well, I do buy the pasteurized nuts at Costco because they're more easily available. When Matt Monarch has a sale on, which I believe he's doing it maybe now, I'll buy the really raw cashews from Matt Monarch because they're really, really hard to find. That being said, I find that actually the steam sterilized cashews digest a little bit easier for me than Matt Monarch's really raw ones. So I'll just leave you with that. The grains, right? Very important on the grains. I want you guys to eat some grains. However you define grains, I'm going to start including some sprouted einkorn, which is an ancient grain, into my diet. Some grains can be eaten raw, like I eat sprouted GMO organic rolled oats, which is basically like an oatmeal that was available actually at Costco. I mean, is it totally raw? Maybe they dried it too hot of a temperature, but I believe oats, especially due to their soluble fiber and other nutrients and a diversity of different nutrients, are good for me to include. If you're super hardcore, you could start sprouting your grains. There's lots of grains that you guys can sprout and then eat fresh and put into things. Hopefully one of these days I'm going to visit the crazy juicero guy who now wrote the Sprout book and see how he lives on like sprouts from grains. In addition, legumes. Legumes are a super critical, important food, and most people into raw foods, unless maybe you're living an Ann Wigmore lifestyle, especially fruitarians, eat hardly any or no legumes or beans. Beans and legumes, so important, including your diet. Lots of studies on that how can they could regulate your blood sugar, even after the fact of eating the beans. Also, the beans are full of beneficial fiber that could feed our gut microbiome. So some legumes can be sprouted and eaten, such as lentils. Some beans should not be sprouted and eaten, like kidney beans. They could kill you, so do your own research on that. But I encourage you guys to sprout the beans and legumes that you can, that are edible in their raw state. And if you're not adverse to it, heat process them like I do. I will cook my beans and legumes in the Instant Pot in water so that I can make them edible and eat them. I mean, the best way to do it, if I did it, which I don't have time at this point, but it's my goal, is to soak and sprout them and then cook them, and then I could ferment them. I haven't gotten that. Usually I usually just soak them, cook them, and then eat them because it's a lot easier. And usually when I eat the beans, I eat that with my raw food salad, so mixed in. So I'm not just eating straight cooked beans, I'm eating small amounts of beans. Also things like rice, well, that would be considered a grain, right? Like this week, I put in the sun the wild rice, which has been, whatever, blanched or whatever, parched before they sell it to you. So I bloomed it, and then I use that. So that's normally considered raw, like especially if you go to All Lock. restaurant in Los Angeles, but technically it's not raw. But I really want you guys to diversify the foods you're eating, because once again, each of these different foods have different plant compounds and nutrients, will also help you achieve your macronutrient profile, but more importantly, your micronutrient profile as well. Oils, I've pretty much shunned all oils, although today I did include some DHA oil from algae that I believe to be beneficial, and I am reintroducing high polyphenol olive oil. That being said, if you guys don't want to do the high polyphenol olive oil, you can get the high polyphenols from olive leaves, as well as unripe olives. So like the green olives that taste bitter, that's because of the polyphenols. So, oils, yeah, I'm all for nuts and seeds. Oils, I'm still on the fence. Maybe gonna get some olive oil, maybe, but the thing with olive oils, they're high calorie foods, and that will displace a lot of fruits and vegetables that you guys are eating. So if you are gonna use some oils, like really limit yourself, like 1 tablespoon a day, like max. And it depends, if you're eating olive oil instead of eating a chicken or something like that, or red meat or cheese, and it's high polyphenol olive oil, I think that's a good thing. If you're eating more oil and eating less leafy greens, that's a bad thing. So we must always have things in context. Fermented foods, that's something that I believe every person on the planet should be eating, especially based on some of the science that I've reviewed lately. Fermented foods, you can get raw fermented foods, that's the kind I recommend, sauerkrauts and kimchis, coconut yogurts if you're doing, coconut fat. I also will eat the natto, that's raw natto, unpasteurized, although in the process of making the natto, they heat the beans. I like also to get raw tempeh when I'm able to do that. Unfortunately, right now I'm not, and that would be, non-pasteurized tempeh. Most tempehs you buy in the grocery store have been pasteurized. That being said, I still see the benefit of eating some pasteurized tempeh with my food, because once again, that's just another way to eat the beans. And when you ferment the food after heat processing them, then it makes it more available for us and creates a little bit different nutrient profile. In the fermented foods, like the natto has vitamin K2. I don't know that I'd say that the kimchi has the K2, but I definitely would say the natto has the K2. Fermented foods also a very rich source of probiotics for our gut microbiome that I believe are quite important, that you're not going to get from just strictly eating fruits and vegetables raw. Next, seaweeds and algae. These are instrumental foods, and I know some camps of raw foods, and maybe even you guys out there, don't eat seaweeds and algae. They're a very potent source of, number one, protein. The algae, you gotta take spirulina, chlorella, blue-green algae on occasion. That's how the fish live. They live off the algae. They're full of phytonutrients, packed full of protein. If you guys are taking a protein supplement right now, powder, right? Take an algae powder instead, right? They're so much more beneficial, because not only do they have the protein, but also they have a whole host of vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients along with just the protein in a more food state package. Seaweeds are important. I'm not going to say eat that every day. I eat maybe small amounts most days. Very important to get our iodine and other trace minerals that are now in the oceans but not on the land because of non-regenerative farming practices, and most farmers don't add trace minerals back into their soil. This is something that I do in my home garden. In addition, the herbs are once again power-packed nutrition. Try to get them fresh, grow them fresh, wild harvest them fresh if you guys can. If you can't get them fresh, hey, some places sell freeze-dried herbs, which are the best way to get them. But if you can't do that, get some dried herbs and include those. Those herbs will ramp up your nutrition profile so you guys can get more of these beneficial plant compounds, that make the herbs smell nice. Same thing with spices. It's a rare day that I get, to get fresh spices. Although, actually I have raw fermented Campot peppers that are basically, peppercorns that have not been dried, that have been fermented in salt. They're a bit salty, but they're raw. Now, those guys are amazing. They're actually quite expensive as well. But, see, here's the thing. These are the things I do to go out of my way to expand the varieties in my raw foods diet, because I don't want to have, some problems in the future because I've restricted my diet so much. So I really try to, cross the line and stay within certain boundaries but yet expand the kinds of foods I eat. And I don't have a problem with organic spices. You guys got to watch out for non-organic spices because they may be irradiated. I have a post on my Instagram at Growing Your Greens about irradiated foods. I do not believe they are health foods. But so you got to watch out because a lot of spices are just irradiated by default as far as I am aware. That being said, fruits and vegetables are not being irradiated by default, but certain ones are. But spices are power packed with polyphenols. For example, cloves. I told my friend, hey, you should get some cloves and incorporate in that into your food. And so I told him he did it. He did it before me, and even though I had a bag here, so now, I'll add cloves into my mixture. When I make my turmeric ginger shots, I'll put a bunch of cloves in there, and then I vacuum blend it and then strain it out in a nut milk bag. So now I get the benefit of the cloves in my diet. How many raw foodists do you guys know, aside from maybe having cloves in a pumpkin pie spice every once in a while, get cloves? So I really try to have a lot of different ingredients in my diet. I mean, another thing I really like to do, getting back to the fruits, is I like to get a lot of dried berry powders, especially the dark purple ones. Those will ramp up your diet to the next level. I know some of you guys won't be able to afford that because berry powders can get quite expensive. And then finally, condiments, right? I've seeked out and searched for the best condiments that I share with you guys online. I don't think any other raw foodist, and most even vegans, don't even search out the best condiments. Link down below to a video I made on that. The best raw vegan condiments that you guys could add to your diet, whether you're eating a fruitarian diet, plant-based diet, to up your phytonutrient game. Most people don't understand my style of diet, my way of eating, because most people don't do my way of eating. I'm like the only guy that knows do my way of eating. It's kind of like a blend between like Joel Furman's nutritarian diet plus raw vegan plus my own things that I've kind of come up with and added in along the way. So here's the thing, guys. Oh, and then we get into like in the herbs and spices, I would add things like coffee and tea. So, you could do like a leafy green dried powder, which is tea leaf powder, matcha tea powder. How many of you guys do matcha tea powder, right? So you can get some tea leaves in you. I mean, a lot of you guys could do teas, right? And just, soak water in the tea and get the liquid extract of the tea, which certain nutrients come out in the tea. But hey, why not get the leafy green powder? It's much more rich in nutrients. You're going to get the whole food instead of just the water extract of the food. Same thing with coffee, guys. I got some green coffee beans that I will blend up on occasion and then under vacuum, and then I can let it sit in a vacuum. I'll make a video on this upcoming, and then squeeze it out. So now I get some of the benefits from the green coffee bean that has not been roasted, because when you start roasting foods, you start, creating some toxins in there, right? My goal is not to eat roasted foods. That being said, when I do heat process my foods, I process it in the Instant Pot only. It is always water cooked, so it is definitely coming in at below 240 degrees, so I'm not creating those excess carcinogens, all right? So these are some ways that you guys can increase your diversity on a raw vegan diet. And if you want to take the next step, then I would say do what I'm doing, because it's the most pragmatic approach that I've come up with. Right? I don't eat fried foods. I don't eat microwave foods. I don't go out to raw food. I don't go out to vegan restaurants or go out to the store and just buy cooked food stuff. I consider that still highly toxic because it depends on how the food was processed, what was added to it, what was taken away. So when I heat process my food, I will use an Instant Pot at present time, so it heat processes the food for a relatively short amount of time, and it can create additional benefits for me. So for example, when I heat process my food to expand the variety of fruits and vegetables, these things in these categories I eat, I'm now able to eat more legumes. I'm able to eat more just standard rice. I eat a purple rice, jaspberry rice, high in polyphenols. I'll eat certain veggies that have been heat processed. So like I'll get purple potatoes or purple sweet potatoes, which is a longevity food for the Okinawans. While you can eat purple sweet potatoes raw, they're definitely not the tastiest. I've also eaten them raw, shredded them up, spiralized them, juiced them. But I also like to heat process my purple sweet potatoes because science proves that if you cook the sweet potatoes, and I steam them once again, and then you cool them, right, they have better resistant starch that could then feed our microbiome in different ways than just eating the sweet potato raw. I mean, I'll have a whole video on this topic as well, because this is a whole topic that a lot of raw food people, don't take into consideration about eating for your microbiome. You are more microbes than human. And if you're not taking your microbiome into consideration, you know, I think you're doing your whole body and self, which includes your microbiome, a disservice personally. So you may want to look into that, you know, and you have to figure out, is it more important to eat from my microbiome and heat process the longevity food of the Okinawans, the purple sweet potatoes? I don't generally do regular sweet potatoes. They're like way too sweet, because my goal with the heat processed foods is not necessarily get my calories. I'm getting my calories from fruits and vegetables primarily, with some nuts and grains and things in there. But my goal with the sweet potatoes is basically get some good fiber, and plus have different flavor and texture sensations, you know, and also be able to reduce my fruit consumption just a tad bit, because now I'm eating more vegetables that have been heat processed, right? So, you know, this is the journey that I've been on, and I just wanted to share with you guys and put it out to the world, because, you know, I honestly want you guys to be successful at your style raw vegan diet. I would encourage you guys not just to blindly adopt your raw food teachers, you know, mantras and lifestyle and teachings, but make them your own, right? Hey, that crazy guy John says this, I'm gonna experiment, see how I feel, right? I've learned that by eating, you know, minimally amounts of heat processed foods that have only been steamed, that I'm not adding seasonings and salts and all these crazy things to, you know, I don't really feel any different than eating all raw, you know, honestly. But, you know, that being said, you know, I really minimize the amount of heat processed food. And I'm able to do this because I'm not just eating for, you know, motion or whatever when I'm eating heat processed foods. I'm doing systematically and logically for my health, right? Because that is what is important to me. And if being raw vegan because you want to be put in a box or hang out with this club, I think I've been ostracized by some raw vegans lately, you know, and that's all right. I accept that. They want to ostracize me. I'm here living my journey, my life, and sharing what I believe to be true, which is eat a majority, overwhelming majority of your food should be raw and minimally processed. And if you want to eat a few heat processed, once again, minimally processed, heat processed in the best way possible with your raw foods, I think that could make a raw foods diet better personally. So that's where I'm going to leave it today. If you guys enjoyed this format, enjoyed this episode, want me to do more episodes like this where I kind of dive in deeper in areas that most raw vegans won't even touch, hey, give this video a thumbs up. That helps out the YouTube algorithm. Get this video out to more people, because, you know, my YouTube channel doesn't get as many views as some pretty girl eating, you know, I don't know, what I'm eating a day raw vegan when she's eating all fruit. But let's check in with her in 20 years and see how she's doing, right? The other thing I will say is that you want to make sure you click that subscribe button right down below so you don't miss out on my new and upcoming episodes that come out every 5 to 7 days. You never know where sharp or what you'll be learning on my YouTube channel. Make sure you click the little bells to get notified as many videos come out. And finally, be sure to check my past episodes. My past episodes are a wealth of knowledge. Over 600 episodes at this time. Share with you guys my flavor of being a raw vegan, as well as my teachings, as well as teachings from a lot of the different teachers that I've interviewed over the years. That is a wealth of knowledge. And these are tips, guys, that you guys aren't going to hear anywhere else. Make sure I posted links down below to some of the videos that I've referenced in this episode so you guys can review them, including why I started eating some heat processed foods, as well as some of the other videos like, you know, how I heat process my eggplants to keep the majority of the nutrition, but be able to get more eggplants into me, diversify my diet, my fiber, and my phytonutrients, and that's what I want for you guys as well. So with that, my name is John Kohler with OKRaw.com. We'll see you next time, and until then, remember, keep eating your fresh fruits and vegetables. They're always the best.